Just when I thought I could give them the benefit of the doubt, ESPN proves me wrong and gives me more wackadoodle takes. Welcome in, Falcons fans, to this episode of Falcons Today by Chat Sports and presented by PrizePicks. I'm going to tell you what ESPN said in their most recent article about how the Falcons can win the draft. That is the title of their article, how each team can win their draft. And unfortunately, the guy who wrote this must want the Falcons to lose their draft because it didn't make all the sense in the world. So what does this draft article consume of? How to ace the Falcons draft? Well, here's what Ben Solak wrote. You got to treat 2026 like a quarterback tryout year. For the most part, I actually kind of agree with that. So it started off a little bit strong. They also say to add a shifty operator at wide receiver. Okay, that's pretty strong. And then completely flushes itself down the toilet by claiming the bottom line is you must beef up the pass rush and plug the remaining offensive gaps. What do you mean by that? So this might not sound crazy on the surface, but wait until you hear the reasoning and the execution from ESPN because it's a brain scratcher for sure. I don't know what you mean by other offensive gaps. Are you saying wide receiver? Are you saying offensive line? Are you saying running back? What are you saying? Offensive gaps could mean anything. So before we continue on talking about the wackadoodleness from ESPN, are you ready for the draft? I am. We had our mock draft, our 3-round mock draft live today. If you are coming over from that, you know who I picked. I actually will bring up in just a second what my interesting trade was during our mock draft. But if you're ready and excited, hit that thumbs up icon. Speaking of that trade, here's what I did in our 3-round live. I traded Kyle Pitts away for a 2nd and a 7th. So we get 2 picks. We let Kyle Pitts walk because next year, most likely, he's not coming back. I don't know that Ian Cunningham is going to want to pay him all the money that he's probably requesting. My guess is Kyle Pitts will somewhere get between $16 and $17 million a year and become the 3rd highest paid tight end on the market. So I traded Kyle Pitts and I selected Chris Brazzell, Lee Hunter, and then Oscar Delp at the end of round 3. Do with that what you will. ESPN official quote, here's what it is. The Falcons are using 2026 as a quarterback tryout year. So they should be interested in accumulating 2027 draft capital for a potential trade-up package. It's hard to trade back when you're already missing your first-round pick, but certainly don't use any 2027 capital to trade up. I actually do agree with this point. So I'm not going to say the entire article is a waste of space, although when you make an entire compelling argument and then your bottom line sucks, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails, if you ask me. But I do agree with treating 2026 kind of like a quarterback tryout year, mostly because next year's draft class for the quarterbacks, loaded. It's going to be awesome. Arch, CJ, Dante Moore, Jaden Mayava, Sam Levitt, just to name a few. You also got guys like Lenora Sellers, Marcel Reed will come out next year as well. I think in the top 45 picks next year, you could see 6 or 7 quarterbacks taken, all jokes aside, in next year's draft. So it should be a very interesting way to watch this pan out. And again, that's not discrediting Penix or Tua in this sort of argument. I think both of them have a legitimate case to be the starter this year, and I think both of them will get an opportunity this year to showcase what they are. And maybe Michael Penix balls out, and then maybe Atlanta doesn't have to draft a quarterback next year. Maybe Tua balls out, and he's a great bridge. I don't know. All I know is somebody's going to have to perform out of these two, and if neither one does, you're drafted a quarterback high anyway. So that's the good news. But like I told you, ESPN comes out. They make this argument, compelling argument, and I'm like, nice, not bad, Mr. Solak. And then he says this. The bottom line was that the Falcons need to beef up their pass rush and plug the remaining offensive gaps if the board falls your way. Don't borrow from 2027. Beef up the pass rush? Beef up what led you to 2nd in sacks last year in the NFL behind the Denver Broncos? The franchise record in sacks from your pass rush, that pass rush. Now, understanding that the James Pierce Jr. situation is kind of fluid right now, I can maybe see adding a pass rusher. But if that is your main priority to beef up the pass rush, I got news for you, pal. Not to sound like a white guy. I got news for you, pal. That's the wrong approach. because Atlanta has so many different needs other than what you're saying, which is beef up the pass rush. It just doesn't make any sense. And those needs, by the way, are as follows, right? Defensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback. You have to address these three. So if what you're saying is you have to get a defensive tackle that can rush the quarterback, that's different than just a pass rush. But again, remember, we told you the Falcons don't really need a pass rush. They need someone to stop the run. That's what they need. They do need a wide receiver, and they could use a developmental cornerback to replace Mike Hughes eventually. So coming up, I'm going to tell you how Atlanta can actually win the draft. And I think my 3-step plan is pretty foolproof, starting with round 2 and then moving throughout the rest of the draft. So keep your eyes peeled for what I've got in store. Before we do that, I got to tell you about my friends over at PrizePicks. Basketball playoffs are officially upon us, and baseball season is underway as well. And it's time to cash in with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app, incredibly easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few players' stats, and you lock in your lineup. And with the new follow feature, you can actually share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups from me or producer JD in one simple click. And this is going to be as easy as it gets, my friends. I actually did make a little lineup for you. Booyah, take a look. $10 to win 24. Super easy. I took the more. I took some lesses in here. Oh, I also took some golf stuff too as well. So make sure that when you pick and play PrizePicks, you play any sport that you want. A 4.7 multiplier to win $23.75. Yours can look like mine. It doesn't necessarily have to. So download the PrizePicks app today with the link in the comments and description and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It is good to be right. All right. My apologies where I had to give a little cough there before we continued on. Step 1 for your second round pick. Take a defensive tackle in round 2. That is the first and most important step. I know ESPN comes out and says you need to boost that pass rush. You don't need someone that boosts the pass rush. You need an anchor. You need a nose tackle, a defensive tackle that's going to plug up, have gap integrity, close out those lanes, and stop the run. Any one of these 3 players will do just fine. Christian Miller, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange. Any one of these guys I'm totally okay with. And I know that a lot of people say Dominique Orange might not go in the second. I think there's a legitimate case that he could. Now, maybe he doesn't go at 48, but if they decided to take him and they really, kind of took a reach there at pick number 48, I'd be okay with Dominique Orange at that position. But I took Lee Hunter, and Christian Miller and Lee Hunter are my 2 guys at this position. So Hunter is a 320-pound behemoth, moves with surprising quickness and fluidity. He's unbelievable with his hands, incredibly fierce, strong, and powerful. Now, he's not quite the pass rusher, and he's not quite refined yet in his skill set. But 10.5 tackles for loss last year is definitely something that I think needs to be studied. This guy has the gap integrity. He's got the ability to stop the run immediately, and you can play him at nose tackle. That's what's great about Lee Hunter, and I think he'd make an excellent addition to this defensive line as that Jeff Ulbrich anchor that everybody wants to see. So how about round 3? What does that mean? Well, I think that's where you go get your wide receiver 2 on the opposite end of Drake London. There's plenty of guys that you could take at this position. I know we've talked a lot about Zachariah Branch. We've talked a lot about Bryce Lance. So I want to pivot a little bit and give you some other round 3 wide receivers that maybe Atlanta is interested in taking. Elijah Sarratt is one of those names. Same with, Zachariah Branch will be definitely in round 3. Skylar Bell, and then, of course, Ted Hurst also at that round 3 position. And, one of the players that continuously is growing interest for me, and I know we did a little thing on Ted Hurst, is Skylar Bell. I heard our Giants host today, Marshall Green, tell me that they're calling him OB3, as in he's kind of like the second coming of Odell Beckham Jr., which is high praise, lofty praise, but Skylar Bell seems to be one of those sleepers that continuously shows up in this 3rd round, and I think a lot of teams are going to go after him. So, for what he brings to the table, At 6 foot, 192 pounds, he threatens on all three levels. He can do it in the short game, the intermediate game, and the deep game. He does lack extension and hand strength, so he's not going to be great in contested catches, but luckily for us, we've got Drake London for that, who's the best contested catcher in the entire NFL. And last year at UConn was definitely his best year as a college player by far. Cut his drops in half, had over 1,200 yards, receiving over 100 yards, 12.6 per catch, and 13 touchdowns. This guy is a stud, and I would not be upset whatsoever if they decided to take him in round 3. And speaking of threes, day 3 picks. I don't think we need to go through 4, 6, and 7. We just combo this. Trade down, get as many picks as you can. Take a cornerback, take some offensive line help, and take a linebacker. Now, one of the things that I want to bring up as we kind of round out today's episode is the linebacker position. There's a player that I'm so high on. He's my diamond in the rough in this draft in round 4 or round 5. His name is Red Murdoch. And if you haven't heard of him before, get ready to listen because he is a fast-flowing, hyperactive motor type of player. He's a little bit smaller for the position. I don't much care about that at my linebacker position if you play angry, and does he ever. By the way, he forced an FBS record, 17 forced fumbles. He holds the NCAA all-time record for most forced fumbles in a career, 17. And like I said, doesn't have the ideal arm length for the position, but wait till you hear this. In the last 2 years, he's had 2 tackles short of 300 tackles. 298 tackles in the last 2 seasons. That's bananas. 16.5 tackles for loss in 2024 and 13.5 tackles for loss in 2025. He can drop back in coverage. He can play at the line. He's going to play hard. He's going to play fast, and he's going to play mean. And I think Red Murdoch is the diamond in the rough. But I'm sure you're asking, what about cornerback as well, Moose? How about Keiontae Scott? Now, Keiontae Scott doesn't fit exactly the profile that Atlanta needs, which is another zone corner or a press corner. But this guy kind of reminds me of Nick Emanwari. He's a really damn good football player. And in the event that there's another injury to Billy Bowman at some point, or if Mike Hughes gets injured, Keiontae Scott has played nickel, he's played safety, and he's played outside corner. He can play every single position. He's the ultimate Swiss Army knife on this, or in this draft class in round 2 or 3. Now, again, Keiontae Scott would probably go in round 2, but he's such a Swiss Army knife player. I think that if he does fall to round 3 or round 4, you have to go after him and get him. But again, he probably won't. But I love him. I love him as a player. The more and more that I see from this guy, the more and more I'm like, go get him, please. I like him a lot. So Keiontae Scott, 13 tackles for loss. He plays downhill. He's an avid run defender. Can do it in the passing game and coverage as well. Maybe not his strength, but man, is he a good player. I'm really excited about his pro prospect. What does Atlanta need to do to win the draft? You tell me down in the comments section down below. I think if you follow that step and that guideline and you trade down and you end up with 6 or 7 picks, you're going to be just fine. Ian Cunningham's doing just fine. That's all I got for you, Falcons fans. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up icon, and as always, rise up and be cool.